Blues for Mr. Charlie is a play by American activist and author James Baldwin, first published and staged in 1964. Loosely inspired by the murder of Emmett Till in Money, Mississippi, prior to the Civil Rights Movement, the play centers on the death of Richard Henry, a black man who returns to his southern hometown to recover from drug addiction and rebuild his life. Shortly after his return, he is murdered by Lyle Britten, a white bigot, who attacks Richard for not knowing his place. The play shifts focus to Britten's trial, where an all-white jury deliberates his fate in a society that devalues black life. Blues for Mr. Charlie explores themes of racial prejudice, the injustices within the legal system, the relationship between Christianity and African Americans, and the costs of racism on both the black community and white allies who try to intervene. The play, a powerful call to action, was dedicated to the civil rights worker Medgar Evers and the children killed in the Birmingham church bombing. The three-act play begins with Reverend Meridian Henry teaching a class of black students, interrupted by Parnell James, who informs them that Lyle Britten will soon be arrested for Richard Henry's murder. Reverend Henry leaves to notify Britten of the arrest, while the students discuss the hardships of life as black people in the South. The scene shifts to Lyle and his wife Jo, storekeepers who are concerned about the possibility of Lyle being imprisoned for the killing. Jo views the incident as a tragic mistake, while Lyle defends himself by claiming self-defense. A flashback reveals Richard confronting his grandmother, Mother Henry, about the death of his mother. Richard suspects she was pushed down the stairs, but his grandmother insists it was an accident. Richard vows to protect himself, carrying a gun despite his grandmother's pleas. Later, Richard and his friends Pete and Juanita visit Papa D's bar, where Richard boasts about his past relationships with white women, showing them photographs. They caution him to keep the pictures hidden to avoid trouble. Richard shares his struggle with drugs and his recovery with Juanita before leaving the bar, where he encounters Lyle. They exchange words, and Richard later decides to take a non-violent path, handing over his gun to his father, Reverend Henry. The flashback ends, and Parnell returns to the church to inform Reverend Henry of Lyle's impending arrest, warning him that Lyle will likely be acquitted and advising him to let it go. Act 2 begins in Jo Britten's home, where white townspeople have gathered, discussing their growing fear of the black community. Parnell James arrives, and the group confronts him about his role in covering the trial as the local newspaper editor. When Lyle arrives, the conversation turns to mockery, as Parnell suggests that black people should be included on the jury. The guests eventually leave, and only the Brittens and Parnell remain. As Lyle heads to the shower, Jo confronts Parnell about her husband's affair with Willa Mae. Willa Mae was the wife of Old Bill, a black man whom Lyle had murdered years earlier, escaping justice for the crime. Parnell refuses to discuss it. Jo then asks Parnell if he's ever loved a black woman, to which he admits he has. Jo wonders if Lyle truly loved Willa Mae and whether he killed Old Bill out of jealousy. She begins to question whether Lyle could have also murdered Richard, suspecting he was capable of violence. Lyle comes downstairs with their son, hands him to Jo, and heads to the store with Parnell, where they discuss Willa Mae. Lyle denies killing Richard, and the conversation is cut short when Jo arrives. A flashback reveals Richard entering the Britten store, despite Lorenzo's warning to stay away. Richard attempts to buy 2 Cokes, needing a $20 bill broken. An argument ensues with Jo, and Lyle enters, ordering Richard to leave. Lorenzo tries to get Richard to step outside, but Richard and Lyle continue to clash. The tension escalates, and Richard shoves Lyle to the ground, humiliating him in front of his wife. As Richard exits, Lyle shouts threats after him. The flashback ends with Lyle unintentionally revealing to Parnell details of Richard's death that had never been reported in the newspaper. Parnell leaves to attend Richard's funeral. Act 3 opens with Lyle's trial, 3 months after Richard's death. The jury is all white, and witnesses take the stand. Jo lies under oath, claiming Richard attempted to sexually assault her during the altercation at the store. Papa D testifies that he saw Richard and Lyle leaving the bar together one night. Lorenzo gives a simplified account of what he witnessed, trying to defend Richard by emphasizing that he had kicked his drug habit. Lorenzo also denies that Richard possessed any explicit photos of white women. Juanita defends Richard's character, saying she had been encouraging him to move north with her. Both Mother Henry and Reverend Henry lie about Richard owning a gun, and Parnell James speaks about Reverend Henry's good character. However, Parnell refuses to directly refute Joe's testimony, knowing that doing so would mark him as an enemy of the town. In the end, the jury returns a not guilty verdict for Lyle. Another flashback reveals Lyle murdering the defenseless Richard after he refuses to apologize for their earlier fight. Lyle then disposes of Richard's body, exactly as he had described it to Parnell earlier. In the courtroom, Lyle refuses to apologize to Reverend Henry for his son's death. The play concludes with the black characters preparing to march in protest, while a disheartened Parnell decides to join them. James Baldwin was an American novelist, playwright, essayist, and social critic, known for his powerful critiques of racial, sexual, and class discrimination in American society. The author of 2 plays, 6 novels, and numerous poetry and essay collections, Baldwin's life and works were the subject of the Academy Award-nominated documentary I Am Not Your Negro in 2016. His legacy endures, and his works continue to be widely read and studied today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy this video, leave a like and subscribe.